Well, thank you. It's good to be with you all. And in fact, I was here 20 years ago when I was working with my college fraternity, Delta Chi, and visited our chapter at Texas A&M. I don't know if there's still a chapter here today, but it's been 20 years since I've been back and was here in Aggie land. I'm glad to be here. I welcome you all to the SEC, for those of you who are, in fact, affiliated with the university. Do we want to talk about the football game now, or do you want to wait till drinks later? I expected a bigger laugh on that, but okay. First, some breaking news. I need to share some breaking news with you. A recent study at Wharton School, University of Pennsylvania, got a gentleman named Albert Maines, PhD. A new study indicates men who choose to go bald by shaving their heads are perceived as being more masculine, even taller, and physically stronger. So, Charlie, congratulations. It works, and I'm working my way there as well. And in fact, according to my own research, the people who are bald were perceived as being much more smarter as well. That's unfortunately in this. I'll give you, telling you the truth, not all fiction today. That they did say that sometimes bald men are perceived as being less attractive than those having full heads of hair. But I don't think that's true. I think we should disregard that part of the study. Well, thank you for the opportunity to address you this afternoon. And first I'll share that I acknowledge that there is cookies and sugar over here on this table, and I am not offended if you get up and need a break to go get something to feed the belly and to keep you alert during this afternoon. I'm going to speak probably about 30, 40 minutes, talk about some things that are in my mind. And I want to thank my good friend, Dr. Charlie Hall, for the invitation, and certainly all the supporters of the Ellison Chair for making this happen, making this possible. It is really nice and honor to be with my friends, and be with you today, and to spend some time with you this afternoon, and certainly tonight, and for those of you joining us at dinner. As Charlie shared in my short biography, I've worked with a variety of industries over the years, and in the past, most notable was residential construction and architecture. What's not mentioned in my bio is that, in fact, I was born into horticulture. My father earned a PhD in botany and spent most of his career working for the U.S. Forest Service. You see that most of my entire life, in fact, has been connected both personally and professionally to the environments in which we work and live, and either constructed or natural. This has been my life. Unexpectedly ended up unplanned, I should say, working for an organization that represents an industry, very industry that my father was involved in while I was a child. As a child, in fact, I spent many of my school holidays assisting my dad in his lab at several forestry research stations. I helped to measure the growth of the plants. I'd go out with a little ruler and see how they were doing. This was experimental stations. I would press seeds into the packs. I'd even turn on the overhead irrigation system, which to me as a child was the most fun of all, was turning the knobs, making water happen, and watching the mechanics of that water go back and forth, and pretending not to, trying to avoid the water as it came over me. I never imagined, as I said, that I'd be with you and others in the plant business later on in my life. And that's really what I want to talk to you about today, is really the business of plants. I know in this audience we have researchers, we have business owners, we have students and teachers, academic and nonprofit professionals. A good friend of mine, a colleague here, Amy from TNLA, and others who are associated with floriculture. Now, I've been in this industry a little less than 3 years, about 2.5 years, in fact. So I've been, the good thing you do is you surround yourself with a lot of smart people, and that's how you begin to learn about a new industry and appreciate the value it's bringing to our people, to the country, to the economy. Though we all have different experiences and perspectives about the industry we support, today I want to tell you a few things that I've learned, and my perspective as someone who's looking at our business from the 30,000-foot level. Almost literally, I spend a lot of time on planes, flying over this country, flying over the Atlantic Ocean, engaging in our industry, almost, at least certainly in the Western Hemisphere, and learning about and supporting the things that you all are trying to do, to put plants in the hands of people or in the ground. I am not a practitioner, to be clear. You are practitioners, so I really want to focus on what I see happening towards the business of our industry or our profession. In fact, I spoke with my mother about the invitation to be the Ellison lecturer, and my mom, I told her the theme, paradigm shifts in the floriculture industry. My mom was very smart, and she asked, well, what are paradigm shifts in floriculture? I said, I have no idea, but Charlie told me that's what I'm talking about. And so I am. And I think really more than talking about paradigm shifts, because paradigm is it's a hard word to say sometimes. But I'd maybe perhaps talk about trends or how our industry is transitioning, which is, in a way is a shift in our paradigms, how we think about what happens, what's really happening, or our experience has been over the years. As Charlie mentioned, again, I will stop using his name in a moment. It'll be about me once I'm finished talking about him. As an association professional, I've been to literally hundreds of conferences over the last 20 plus years or so, and I'm sure Amy can appreciate that. We spend a lot of our time sitting in meeting rooms like this and ballrooms, et cetera, learning and doing and facilitating meetings. And I've heard speakers from all over the world and every component of our society: business leaders, political leaders, engineers, scientists, media moguls, heads of states, and others. And all of them had some very important things to say. In fact, for many of them, in fact, really were talking about was themselves. But as much as I enjoy talking about myself, I really want to share some thoughts about, as I mentioned, how our industry is shifting, and perhaps some believe is not shifting or changing quickly enough to keep up with our modern economy. First, I want to start with you by showing a brief instructional video about following instructions. And actually, it's a short piece from the television show The Office. And in this episode, let me switch over to that. In this episode, the character is Michael Scott, the office manager. Who watches The Office? A lot of you do. Okay, so you'll appreciate the personalities in this video. Michael Scott, the office manager, he's on the left-hand side of the driver, and Dwight Schrute, his nitwit, self-appointed assistant, are on a road trip. They're driving along some country roads to visit with clients, and they're using a GPS device. We're not going to watch the whole thing, will we? Oops.
Wait, no. It means bear right. Up there. It said right. It said take a right. No, look. It means go up to the right, bear right, over the bridge, and hook up with 307. Take a right. Use a shortcut to it. It said go to the right. It can't mean that. There's a language. It knows where it's going. The machine knows. Stop yelling at me. Stop yelling at me. I didn't train for this. Exit the window.
Anyway, I hope you get the point that we need to know where we're going, and even if we have the technology to tell us where we're going, we got to look around, and see what's really happening around what's happening around us, and that you got to pay attention to what's happening, despite perhaps getting instructions or various data coming into. You need to pay attention to what is really happening, and listening to the road and looking beyond perhaps what we think are what we perceive to be reality, which in this case was the GPS device. As Michael Scott proves in this video, we've always done it this way. It's a strategy that's not going to work for our industry anymore. Floriculture is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and we do not have all afternoon, obviously, to talk about every element of all of it in great detail. So I want to focus on what I think are really two main components, and to keep this conversation very simple, without diving into all the great detail, and that is talking about production at one end and the retail at the other end. In short, we develop plant products, and we do that through genetics and certainly the growing and the production of plants, and then we have to sell them, whether we're selling them in the retail side. And I talk about retail, I'm saying garden centers, interior plantscape, florists, anywhere that someone is buying a plant at the end of the supply chain once the plant is grown. And I say, when I'm talking about plants, I mean trees, shrubs, turf, etc., flower products as well. Obviously, there's a lot of detail in between the growing and the production, the end of the retail side, between these two bookends. And I'm not going to go into all that today. In fact, what I'm going to talk about may not even be new to some of you, but I hope it will just confirm some of your suspicion about if you think you're seeing this, I may be able to confirm the fact that is in fact what we're seeing. We're looking away from our GPS device and looking up and looking around and seeing what's happening in our industry. So 2 years ago, I attended an annual meeting of my professional society, which is the American Society of Association Executives, or ASAE. There I heard, in fact, one of the best keynote presentations of my life. And I've heard a lot of presentations. The lecturer didn't speak to my heart or make me cry or encourage me to support some noble cause like saving puppies or that sort of thing. Instead, he spoke simply about a very complex problem. And then I realized some of the strategies that we need to implement to protect and grow the floriculture industry. Peter Sheehan is the founder and CEO of Change Labs. It's a global consultancy for companies like Apple and IBM. He's also the author of several books about the Y generation, something I know that many of you all talk about frequently, and about driving innovation and change in our businesses. Peter was the speaker that day. He's a younger guy. He's an Aussie, and I think having his accent alone gave him some credibility, of course. But he has his book called Flip, How to Turn Everything You Know on Its Head and Success Beyond Your Wildest Imaginings. And in a speech that day, Sheehan says, to satisfy customers for engagement and contact, spiritual, emotional, and physical, we need to remember that it's not just business. Business is personal. You need to notice what is and what isn't working, and then we got to be willing to flip. That is, you need to be able to change your perspective on how you run your business. He calls that mindset flexibility. Mindset flexibility. Okay, fine. I know this. We know this. He's not saying anything to me at the time that's, in fact, very profound at that point. But then he began to tell a story of one of the most ubiquitous, not easy for me to say, brands that practically everyone in the world knows, which is Sony. Water helps you say those tough words. Okay. So back in the late 1970s, Sony produced the Walkman and became their signature product. It was lightweight for the time, gave people the freedom to wander the planet while listening to their music. It was the high-tech product that everyone had to have. I know some of us in the room may have never seen this device, but we used to. But everyone had to have it. In fact, raise your hand if you owned a Sony Walkman. Yeah. No one in this wall has raised their hands. Okay, raise your hands if you're still using it. All right. This conversation is not for you then, sir. Sorry. All right. Obviously, the biggest flaw with the design was first they had a tape player and then they went to the CD player. Same concept, okay? That if you CDs, you know what CDs are? Okay. If you wanted to listen to more than one album, you had to carry around your CDs or your albums with you. So I was doing some research on this and said, do you remember this? This is a cassette case carrying storage case. Had a handle. You carried it around with you. You had it in your car. You carried all your tapes with you, and there's something similar for the CDs. It's really sad, and I'm not that old of a guy, but these are called vintage now. These are vintage items to carry around our cassette tapes. All right, so Sony had the device to listen to music. Sony and its various corporate configurations over the years is also one of the largest producers of recorded music. And Sony Corporation is also one of the largest movie and television producers. And you may know this, but they own, and they still at the time, and still own lots of our media that we listen to, watch, etc. But here's the point. At the time, Sony owns the entertainment delivery device, the Walkman. They own the music. They own the movies and the television shows. So let me ask you again, how many of you are really sincerely using a Sony Walkman or CD anymore? Yeah, nobody is. Nobody's using that device anymore. Yet Sony owned everything at the time. What are we using now? Let's see, we're using iPhones, we're using HTC, we're using Samsung products, lots of other products, but we don't see Sony around. And if Sony, by and large, the consumer products we use are high-tech entertainment or maybe your alarm clock, but very little portable devices have the Sony brand on it at this point. And not to be dramatic about it, as I wrote here to myself, that this is kind of what keeps our industry up at night. Is that we don't want plants and trees and flowers and shrubs to be the next Sony. We need to figure out how we're going to now get to that point that we become the Sony or become vintage to anyone in any room anywhere. So what happened to Sony? They owned it all, yet they let a little startup company called Apple be the David to their Goliath, and the story, as we all know, is what it is today. And that it is, in fact, Apple that now owns the delivery device. And while they may not own music and own movies, but they own it, and they give it to us through our phones or iPods. Quoting Sheehan, one of the biggest problems was that all of Sony's products were in silos, so that the music didn't talk to the technology, which didn't talk to the entertainment division. They had the silos in their corporation, but nobody talked to anybody. And what happened? So they never converged, the three big pieces of their company, into one product that everyone wanted. Apple figured this out. As I said, the rest is history. So this is the story that I heard at the conference that resonated with me so powerfully. First I thought, are there silos in my organization? What are we not doing because the various staff departments are not talking? Are we stifling innovation within my own organization? You think about that as a business owner or a leader, what's happening in my own organization. So that hit me hard. I'm at a professional society meeting and thought, where are the silos in OFA? But then, as a CEO of a National Horticulture Association, I thought about the implications of this on our own industry. Where are our silos? How do we keep from missing out on the opportunity to sell more plants, flowers, trees, and other related products? Many think of the problem we have as a perceived disconnect between the growers and the retailers, and ultimately the consumers. Either way, we need to make sure we do not become obsolete, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. So 4 years ago, if you were here, Bob Delavoye, a previous Ellison lecturer, referred to Dr. Charlie Hall as our industry oracle. This is, in fact, my last reference to Charlie. Charlie was speaking the truth and speaks the truth often. We need to adjust our strategies due to changing demographics in our country, in our country and in other countries. The retirement of boomers, the emerging Y generation or millennials, and the X stuck in the middle all have different buying patterns, and the outlook is not good for us right now, at least for several years, perhaps a decade. But we just can't sit around and wait for the market, the population to catch up to us. We need to stay in business in the meantime, so we'll be there in 10 years when the population, the millennials, are ready to start buying or buying homes, et cetera, and have more disposable income. So speaking for silos, in fact, because I know the audience I'm speaking to here, I also want to talk about something related to this, and not just silos in our own industry, but also something I've been thinking about working in various industries over the years, that what are the silos between the various academic colleges and departments within this campus? In fact, Charlie, just talking about that in the hallway about how do we get different departments need to talk to each other. There needs to be more interdisciplinary connectivity and cooperation. This is what students in the profession need. In our case, agriculture needs to talk to architecture, and architecture needs to talk to construction needs to talk to health science, et cetera. There's a lot of research about the implication of plants and trees on healthcare, energy efficiency, crime reduction, increasing property values, and more positive attributes. But we need to share this with everyone that is engaged in constructing any sort of environment. We can't keep talking to ourselves. And similarly, we need to get the architects to talk to us, and conversely. If you're interested in this, I'm not going to dive into too much about some of the health sciences and design issues, but there are two great organizations for you to consider if you want to explore more, and that is the Academy of Neuroscience for Architecture, which is exploring how design impacts our brains. And we know that plants and trees do impact our health, and how we can see plants. For example, if you're in a hospital, if you can see trees outside your window, you're more likely, you will in fact heal more quickly, generally speaking, than someone who doesn't see plants, trees, or flowers. That's why flowers, in fact, going to a person's room when they're sick is a great thing to do. Not just showing you care, but seeing flowers, seeing things visually like that will help you recover more quickly. And then the Sustainable Sites Initiative, which is working, I know Bob talked about this a few years ago as well, it's going on for several years, talking about how do we measure sustainability and bring more sustainability sites, which includes plants. Okay. So I worked at McDonald's when I was a teenager. Back to me for a moment. Back then we assembled the sandwiches in advance and placed them in a heated bin, and perhaps, again, not to pick on the students, but you may not have ever known this, but you used to go to McDonald's, you got the hamburger the way the hamburger was made. The sandwiches would sit in the bin for 10 minutes, and then we would just discard them after that point. So we'd make it, they didn't sell, we threw it away. The policy was at the time was you have it our way. A hamburger comes with a meat patty, a squirt of ketchup, mustard, some onions, a pickle, a toasted bun. That's a hamburger at McDonald's. That's the way you're going to get it. That's the way it works. If you don't like it that way, while the attitude really wasn't tough, that basically was a message we were saying to our students, to our customers, that we would have to tell them, in fact, I'm sorry, I cannot take the pickle off your sandwich. You'll have to do that yourself. We were not allowed to customize a sandwich. You got it the way that it was prepared. We wondered what was the big deal. I think about the shopping experience, thinking of that story of going into a garden center and finding perhaps not what I want and being told this is what you will need, this is what you'll get, and that's the way it's going to be. course, it's ironic that our training videos at the time were otherwise, telling it different stories. In fact, I want to show a brief portion of a video that I found on YouTube, a McDonald's training video, which sort of illustrates this point. First one I noticed, I love to rewind the tape before you put it back. So let me just get to where I need to be, 255. And this worked perfectly earlier in rehearsal, so. Okay.
Hamburger, French fries, apple pie, coffee.
White guy. That's what we got in here, a white guy.
Why is everyone in such a hurry?
May I help you?
Why can't they make up their minds?
Well, what will you have? Oh, what am I, a mind reader?
From now on, I just don't care.
Yep, nothing seemed to go right. Hurry, hurry, hurry.
So I want to sort of project that onto, and of course, I'm generalizing here today. There are wonderful retail outlets and wonderful growers, but projecting on the fact that what are we saying to our customers, either if you are a grower, or excuse me, you're a retailer picking plants from growers, or retailer or customer coming in. I've had this experience working and walking into garden centers and saying, what do you want? Hurry up. Or, leave me alone, I'm working here. I don't want to be disturbed. So, there's some undoing to do and some to be thinking about shifting how we approach our perspective on how we offer customer service at any way along the supply chain. And I think this McDonald's video illustrates this, but also, eventually, McDonald's changed. Burger King used to be have it your way, and they meant it literally, have it your way. And now today, McDonald's is saying the same thing. But at the time, McDonald's basically said, fine, if you don't want it our way, go down the street to somewhere else. And people did. They went down the street to somewhere else. And we need to think of how do we internalize that, to think about that sort of retail outlet and how we can use that learn from that in terms of how we do retail in our business as well. We all know that people want to buy things differently. They want it fast, good, and cheap, and then they want something extra, as Sheehan said, the speaker at the time. This shift in purchasing is having a huge impact on how people perceive our products and the shopping experience that they expect. So what are we doing to address this? First, we have to change our paradigm about how we get products to the market and into the hands of consumers. If you build it and they will come, no longer works for us and for most goods and services. This is not unique to horticulture or floriculture. The boomers are no longer landscaping, and young adults do not yet have the disposable income for our products. Most of the people in this room already know that there are thousands of independent retailers, growers, and others in the supply chain that we need to inform about the shift that's been going on for several years. So what are some of the solutions? 2 years ago, when I first heard Charlie speak, I lied, I did one more reference, heard Charlie speak at an industry conference, he shared with the audience then that we need to talk about how plants, trees, flowers need to bring more to our lives than just pretty. In fact, I thought at the time, Charlie just stole my idea. I was already thinking the same thing, but he affirmed that my thought was that it has to be more than just pretty. We need to be offering more. We need to sell pretty, just doesn't sell anymore. It's enough for our changing marketplace. Plants have to be essential to someone's life. As the next generation is coming about, the millennials or the Generation Y, these are the things that they think about. They think about hipness, health, efficiency, gadgets, sustainability or green, and their experiences. What is the experience that I will have with your product or in buying your product, and will it bring to me hipness or health, or address some of my interest in sustainability or green, however you want to define that. So we're going to have to produce plants and shopping experiences that meet these needs. And while we think the kids are doing everything on the internet, it hasn't yet been proven that we can or cannot successfully sell plants through the internet. The tough part is really we have several generations in the marketplace right now, and we have to serve all of them effectively at the same time. So it's not just about introducing new technology. We have a whole range of customers that we have to figure it out. And some businesses are figuring it out and doing well with that. Today, 16% of the US lives in rural areas. That means about 80% of our country lives in an urban environment. and urban is it doesn't mean necessarily New York City or Washington, D.C. College Station is an urban environment as well. The rest of us, if you're not there yet, the rest of us are all moving to urban areas. You may have heard about food deserts, an area where there's little or no access to food. And while I don't want to diminish that situation, because it's not a good situation, our industry needs to consider also the possibility of plant deserts. In fact, plant deserts already exist. Washington, D.C., for example, has been a home for me for almost 30 years. I reside in Columbus, Ohio now as I work with OFA, but I've spent almost half my adult life living in Washington, D.C., in essentially the downtown area. Today, more than 600,000 people live in that city. They make up approximately 250,000 households. The median income is almost $60,000, but the range goes up to obviously multimillionaires that live in that city. But guess how many garden centers there are in that city? There are approximately 5 garden centers in that city, and one of them is a Home Depot, which just opened about 5 years ago, if that. So we need to think about the fact that millennials are not buying cars like previous generations. They're not part of the car culture. Young adults living in cities do not want to own cars. And this is freaking out the automobile industry, but it also has implications for us as well. It also means they just can't drive down the street to pick up some plants for their apartments or plants for their single-family homes, which also exist in Washington, D.C. And they could, there may not even be enough stores for them to shop from or the diversity of product for which they want to buy. What I'm describing is not exclusive to young people. I am, in fact, part of the problem. If you were to visit my home in Washington, you would see one lonely plant. The reality is I did not own a car. I could not buy plants. How was I to get all that home? You can't walk home with palms or whatever it might be easily, or get on the bus, and subways do not go to where the garden centers are. So I'm suggesting that getting plants in the hands of our consumers is more than just an economic issue. It's also a geographical problem. Food trucks are hit right now, and you may be seeing that around lots of cities, and perhaps here in College Station or other cities where you live. Maybe we need plant trucks. Maybe we need trucks that drive around and deliver plants and sell plants on the corners. I don't know, is this a crazy idea? I was thinking about that, and recently I went to a street festival, and I saw a truck that sells greeting cards that you don't have to go to CVS anymore or Walgreens. In fact, this truck drives around, parks downtown. You can walk out during a lunch hour and buy greeting cards and other novelty items from a truck. So my point is, we got to think about this differently. We can't just think people are going to get plants by going to a garden center or to a florist or to a grocery store. In fact, that's where a lot of it's going, is to the grocery stores and the mass merchandisers. We got to think about other strategies to get plants into the hands of people. So here's what we know. Sort of moving on here. Hard turn. Retailers are reluctant to raise their prices, and at the same time, the cost of business is increasing. So you can do the math. Our retailers are eroding their balance sheets, and this does not mean that they're not all raising prices, but few are doing so. And so we're undermining ourselves by not reflecting the value, the real value, and how plants are essential to ourselves. A recent study by Garden Center magazine found that, today's Garden Center magazine found that only 78% of the respondents in that survey have a website. 74% use Facebook. Only 18% are using Twitter, and less than 10% are using Pinterest. Does anybody here not know what Pinterest is? Okay. It's essentially a visual, it's a customized catalog of things that you enjoy. And you can post pictures of products, services, your favorite artists, whatever, onto your personal profile, and you can share that with the world. But now, now merchandisers are using that, those selling consumer goods, to display their products in a whole different way than looking at a traditional catalog online, that they make it fun to look at their products. And you can go on and you can pick things and say, hey, I really like that Sony Walkman, and you can then place it on your Pinterest page. So you're building sort of a catalog of your interests, and that's Pinterest. Okay. So Pinterest is an emerging social network site, but the point is here, looking at this data, that not even 100% of the retailers that responded to a survey, so it's not even 100%, but those who are engaged enough to get the email to respond to a survey are not on Facebook or on some of the other major social networks. And then only 6% are using any sort of location services. through Google or like Yelp. So if you were to go on Yelp and you wanted to find a garden center, only 6% are saying that they're in fact on Yelp. You won't find them. So as I mentioned, this is also a geographical problem. Where do we find the stores that people want to buy plants from? So let's back up to something I said a little bit earlier. What is the generation of the emerging market? Where are they finding their information? Yet we're not talking to them through the way that they need to find their information. That very generation that we need to start cultivating now to get up to speed, so they're buying plants when we're ready to have them buy plants. But there's positive news. Edibles, such as patio-grown tomatoes. Excuse me, more water is needed. Edibles, such as patio-grown tomatoes, or peppers, or herbs, as Martha says, and others have the strongest increase in sales. In fact, 77% of the survey respondents said that they saw good growth in this category. Don't pay any attention to that slide. 77% of the survey respondents said that they saw good growth in edibles. In fact, I was talking to Mrs. Ellison about her mother and her gardening. I don't know where you are in the room. There you are, right in front. But her mother was gardening into the later years of her life. What's great about edibles is that you don't have to do anything. It comes in a pot ready to go. You put it on your porch, you water it, and it's done, and you get tomatoes and you get peppers and you can get all those sorts of things out of that. People are just not into gardening as much as perhaps your mother's generation or my parents' generation, where they wanted to get their hands dirty. They wanted simple, cheap, and quick. Peter Sheehan said the same thing, and it's the same thing with our products as well. The problem is, right now, there's huge growth in edibles, but it's only 5% of gross sales. So we're not going to make up the loss in other things by focusing on these small edibles, but it is coming about, and that is a shift to be thinking about that, again, going away from pretty and getting to plants and things that people will want to use and will be relevant to them and essential to them, which is providing some healthy, nutritious things that they can grow simply, not have to worry about digging up their backyard. Furthermore, and this is not the great news, in fact, the Garden Center magazine said that 22% of the garden centers they surveyed saw that their sales declined. 22% of garden centers saw sales decline. And 5% of the stores saw a loss of more than 20% in this last year. That's huge. Almost a quarter of their sales are down. Stan could elaborate on a lot of this. I know you advise garden centers and other retailers, and it's a disturbing trend that we need to be thinking about and solving, and we'll talk about that in a moment. To me, what I thought was most disturbing in this finding of today's garden center, which is referred here in this slide, is that when retailers were asked the question, if someone offered to buy your store at near market value to zero out any debt that you had, would you take the offer? And 40% of them said yes, they would buy out. They don't want to be in the business anymore. So it's tough out there right now. They want to get out of business. They're not happy with their experience of running the very industry business that we need. We need plants and trees and flowers, not just for pretty, but it's essential. But people don't want to be in the business anymore. So sales are increasing. I mean, there is good news. Things are better this year than last year. And things that retailers sell are doing better, like outdoor furniture, the hard goods, expensive hard goods are doing well. But we're not there yet, and there's lots of time to go. And this is why OFA and the American Nursery and Landscape Association and Amy's organization and others, are including consultants that stand, ramping up our programming for retailers. This is part of how we hope to help solve the solution. We've been focused on grower needs for so long that we're really not giving enough attention to the other end of the market chain. And this is a huge paradigm shift for us as well, that the horticulture trade associations are saying, okay, listen, we've got to help our growers get plants out into the consumer's hands. In fact, OFA and ANLA are often spoken about as grower organizations, but really this is wrong today. We stopped being grower organizations many years ago. We are supporting the entire supply chain, and with major emphasis right now on strategies to help companies sell more plants. This is an example of a program of OFA, or we call it Garden Center Live. Loving the idea of growing plants and getting your hands dirty is not enough in today's economy to have a successful garden center, or florist shop, or other plant retail shop, or interior plantscaper. It's not enough that it's not the independent retailers are competing against the big box stores, and they are, but not enough of them investing in improving their own business operations. So we're just chatting, I've forgotten your name, Stacy, a moment ago, about you can be wonderful at your craft, but you got to know how to run your business. So you can be a great grower, a great florist. know how to do great design, but unless you know how to make money at it, you're not going to succeed. And that's a duh, but not everybody realizes that. So we're investing a lot, and that's a big shift on our part as organizations trying to support the industry. It's putting a lot of energy and a lot of resources into helping the retail end of our supply chain. Okay, enough for retail. Let me talk a little about the chlorophyll side of things, and first I'm going to show you another video. This is from the movie The Devil Wears Prada. Some of you probably have seen this. Great movie, hysterical. Just a short clip snippet from that.
But do you think it's too much like...
Like Le Croix from July? I thought that, but no, not with the right accessories. It should work.
Where are the belts for this stuff? Why is no one ready?
Here. It's a tough call. They're so different.
Something funny?
No, nothing's, it's just that both those belts look exactly the same to me. I'm still learning about this stuff and,
This stuff? Oh, okay. I see. You think this has nothing to do with you. You go to your closet and you select, I don't know, that lumpy blue sweater, for instance, because you're trying to tell the world that you take yourself too seriously to care about what you put on your back, but what you don't know is that that sweater is not just blue, it's not turquoise, it's not lapis, it's actually cerulean. And you're also blithely unaware of the fact that in 2002, Oscar de la Renta did a collection of cerulean gowns, and then I think it was Yves Saint Laurent, wasn't it, who showed cerulean military jackets? I think we need a jacket here. And then cerulean quickly showed up in the collections of 8 different designers. And then it filtered down through the department stores and then trickled on down into some tragic casual corner where you no doubt fished it out of some clearance bin. However, that blue represents millions of dollars and countless jobs. And it's sort of comical how you think that you've made a choice that exempts you from the fashion industry when in fact you're wearing a sweater that was selected for you by the people in this room from a pile of stuff.
What's the point? I don't know if I need to really project this onto our industry necessarily, but I think you think about the enormous variety of plant material that we offer consumers right now. How many purple petunias do we need? I naively asked, in fact, when I started in this business a couple years ago, but I'm not alone in this confusion. It's more clear to me today, obviously, than it was a couple years ago. But with fewer purchases happening, the breeders and growers are asking the same sorts of questions right now. How many purple petunias do we need? So there's definitely a shift happening at the other end of the supply chain. 20 to 25 years ago, there might have been 1 or 2 major sources for impatiens or 2 sources for marigolds or petunias, etc. Companies then said, these are the major crops, and they wanted in the market and started their own genetics. But now we had lots of redundancy. Now we don't need that much breeding for the current market. When the market grows, everyone wants a piece of it. When the market shrinks, they have to make tough decisions. How many sweaters of whatever color do we need? It'd be easy to say, of course, that Sam Walton is to blame and the Walmarts. As this company squeezes out pennies from its suppliers, as the margins shrink and companies like those in our industry cannot provide a large variety of plants because they have their own price, it's hard for them to make money based on their individual company constraints, their overhead, etc. So this forces companies that cannot supply a product at thinner margins to either get out of the business or focus on 1 or 2 really good products. And we see this happening in floriculture. Companies are focusing on only a few of their best-selling products and stopping or selling other lines completely. With the market shrinking and competition is heating up in the changing structure and performance of our industry, they're having to make these tough decisions. Now, our industry has generally always gotten along, and this is not necessarily true for other industries, like, for example, pharmaceuticals or the electronics industry. Tylenol will say, buy their pain reliever because it's better than the pain reducer offered by Pfizer. We have not generally said that in our industry. Historically, our profession has said, buy plants, buy flowers. But now, breeders are directly branding their own products, like Ball's Way petunias or Eckes poinsettias. It's a pull through the market channel as opposed to a push, which has been the traditional way. And as the market tightens, the companies need to steal more share from each other. And they do this by aggressively pushing a product into the market, or they buy the company or the competing product, which is happening. Lots of consolidation happening. And speaking of pull-through, breeders are also changing how they market their products to growers and wholesalers. Many of them are deliberately teaching their customers how to market their products downstream so they can help retailers be more successful. Now, here's an example, a couple of photographs from Eki. They had some displays over the years during the California Spring Trials, what used to be known as the PAC Trials. California Spring Trials, I tell you, is that it's a week-long event in California. It takes place in March or April, where all of the major breeders and others from around the world open their facilities up in California. They have essentially an open house, and growers and others can go around from facility to facility, say what are the new varieties, what are the new products. Once upon a time, it was really more about displaying their new, really about success in their trials. Now it's all about marketing and branding. They're still, of course, discussing how plants are growing and how more viable than others, but the experience is different. So this is Eki about 5 or 6 years ago. This is how they displayed their plants. This is a common way that you saw this when you visit a facility. They have everything out on a bench, or as pack trials, you might see things in packs on benches as well. Today, you visit Eki. This is how they display their plants. So the breeders themselves are changing the way that they market, that they're almost jumping over those along the supply chain and talking to the growers and having the growers impact, hopefully, the retailers to say, if you buy my plant, this is how it's going to sell better. You need to be able to display it this way or similarly. In fact, Eki is also now partnered with a container, what's I'm looking for, decorative pot manufacturer, so that they are now giving you the plant is growing in the pot and it goes right to the retailer that way. And they're prescribing certain plant gets a certain color pot. And here's the deal we've already arranged with a couple people so that you are marketing your plant. And this is a big shift happening, that they care about how their plants are going to end up and not rely on a retailer on their own to make a decision how they're going to market their own plants. Company now can also control the market through patents. However, the patents for floriculture can be very expensive due to the development costs. Unlike Monsanto, we can't spread out the costs of a new patent over thousands of acres of corn. So it's not easy to do patents. But now we're not just patenting plants, we're also getting into patents for specific genes. For example, Ball developed the gene for the first ever black petunia, which was a big hit in the market last year. Now they can use that gene in many other products, and they own the black color to move it into other plants as well. This is one way that they're gaining market share, by having a patent for this specific gene. Companies are also getting utility patents. And again, as I understand it, this is a fairly new phenomenon and what's shifting in terms of trying to control market share. In this last year, a lot of big things happened last year. Duman, in fact, a European company with a US operation, they received a patent here in the United States for splicing together multiple species into one cutting or into one liner. So if you wanted 3 different types of plants growing out of a container, which, everyone does that, well, they patent that. So now if you want to do that, you have to pay them a royalty to have the privilege, if you will, and I don't mean this in a condescending way, but a privilege to grow plants in that way, which has been perhaps a common experience for many other growers. So the business of floriculture is dramatically changing. It's not just what kind of plants are we going to offer to the market, but how are they going to control the market in a variety of ways that we never thought of in the early years. Consolidation, of course, seems to be happening more readily. Really, it's a classic maturing of our industry with larger and fewer players. And look at almost any other industry, what's happening there, that the larger companies are buying up. Real estate industry is a big one, that lots of small real estate offices are gone because they're being bought up by the huge conglomerations. Traditionally, our market, and this is sort of a simple way of looking at it, our market channel was breeder, producer, distributor, to grower, to wholesaler, to retailer, to consumer. Now, in fact, our mass merchandisers are skipping over the wholesaler and working directly with the grower and breeders. Because the bifurcation in the market, there's independent, there's mass market retailers in our industry now, and are competing against each other. And essentially, the chain has gotten compressed, and we're skipping over and saving dollars and going directly to consumers, directly to retailers, by excluding others in the industry. So it's not just that others are, on one end of the stream, but those in the middle as well are finding out ways, how do they remain successful and remain relevant to the supply chain as well. Of course, this provides creative opportunities for people. If you're selling stuff at the curb, there's lots of things on the tails of the curb that you can go in and buy up and get market share in other ways, but it's still a challenge. So finally, I'm going to wrap up here. In fact, I can talk a little longer than I expected to. I want to share with you some of the top 5 things that are ongoing and emerging issues that we've not really yet tackled as an industry. We're talking about it. We need to think about tackling. And this is really my call to action, which is how you end all presentations, things to think about to get going. First thing is water scarcity. Water is the new oil. There will be wars fought over water, internationally and beyond, and among our states, in fact. How will we ensure that we have enough water to produce our products for consumers to use, and for consumers to use our products? Aquifers are being depleted and irrigation wells are going dry in 18 countries. So this is not just a US phenomenon. This is going on around the world. In fact, the top 3 countries where this is happening is China, India, and the United States. In the leading irrigation states, the irrigated area has peaked and is beginning to decline. And these states are California, Arizona, Colorado, Florida, and this state, Texas. These states are also some of the top producers of floriculture products, and we're running out of water in the states where we're growing the most. And cities are buying up irrigation rights from farmers and ranchers, and they will come for us as they continue to grow and need more water to feed their citizens. Second emerging issue, or issue in fact that's with us now, is food scarcity. You think, why? What's that have to do with us? Food is the new oil. There will be wars fought over food. Are we in the food business? Sort of. We have our porch-grown edibles and we have greenhouse-grown vegetables. We're not big ag, obviously, but we contribute to the food market. Do we need to worry about Do we need to worry about the global food supply? Well, domestic and international demand is increasing. By 2050, there will be 9.3 billion people on the planet, and the U.S. is already feeding many of them. What's going to be more important in the future? Using our land, water, and energy to produce pretty, or to ensure an adequate food supply? Ironically, as I mentioned earlier, we know that plants and trees can contribute to all sorts of ways beyond beautification, but we have to tell that story. Third thing, labor. We need more skilled labor to work in the fields in our greenhouses. Obviously, we're still waiting for the federal government to help us fix this problem, but the battle is far from over. And speaking of government, and this is a shout out to Amy and her colleagues here, that while we need to make a good fight in Washington, D.C., our state association colleagues know that equal efforts need to be happening within the state legislators and regulators as well. We can't continue to blame, it's a Washington problem. In fact, our problems are many times local within our own state. The battlegrounds are here as well. And speaking of labor issues, that we also are finding that more growers are moving their operations overseas and finding ways of bringing plants back into the states. They begin them there and then bring them into the states, and it's cheaper to do it that way than having labor here on our domestic soil. Fourth is sustainability, and as we use lots of plastic, water, energy, and other inputs, we can't keep doing this. We won't be allowed to keep doing this. Thankfully, entering the market now are growing containers that are recyclable and compostable. In fact, the Horticultural Research Institute is exploring the possibility of making pots with the keratin from chicken feathers. We're also offering more plants that need less water and other inputs to thrive, but sustainability is an issue we need to pay attention to. In fact, early on, I visited a small greenhouse, a bedding plant nursery grower in Ohio, just down the road from Columbus, and they were growing things in their hoop house, and we're talking about taking care of hoop houses, and they got a tear either in the shade cloth or the vinyl sheeting. I said, "What do you do?" They said, "We just take it off and throw it away." I said, "Does the Sierra Club know you do that? Did you just throw away plastic and things? Well, what are we doing? We need to be thinking about that, because that's an issue that we will have to address, because it's going to come to us eventually." We're out in the suburbs, or in the rural areas. People may not be watching, but these things will lead to us eventually. Talking about sustainability often leads to discussion about global climate change, and while some of our politicians may want to dismiss the notion, there are undeniable facts about the changes we are experiencing. Temperatures are rising. In fact, we had the hottest summer on record here in the United States. This is having a profound effect on the availability of water and energy. For example, climate models project a 70% decrease in snowpack in the western U.S. by mid-century. Now, I'm glad we're not in the winter recreation business, but snow melt from the mountains feed the rivers with fresh water that we need to survive and to support food production and support our production as well. Higher temperatures also affect pollination and photosynthetic activity. So we need to think about how we're going to be part of the solution, which at the very least can be shrinking our use of energy and resulting outputs. Alternative energy like wind and solar is our answer. And think about the acres of land and buildings we have that we could install wind turbines or solar panels. It's all very expensive. Right now we're kind of stuck in the middle, but this is an issue we need to start thinking about as we shift our thinking of our industry. 5 is research, and how we fund the research we need to control disease and pests, improving growing operations, develop healthier and hardier plants, among other needs. And actually, I have a 6th item. As Sheehan told me, you have to give your customers something extra. So last is a bit of pandering, but outreach, which is similarly, how will we fund the necessary university extension services? We need to bring research and support to the fields, because you can't easily pick up a nursery operation and bring it here to College Station and say, hey, I need some help. Furthermore, our colleges and universities need to be thinking about the value of horticulture to our lives and position our hort schools as essential to developing healthy communities and healthy lives. And I know that's in fact what's happening here at Texas A&M with rebranding the college. Economists believe that we can't have a resurgence in our industry if we don't undermine ourselves first. Beyond the economy, the aforementioned issues will have to be addressed for long-term preservation. Government, industry, and academia will have to work together more closely to solve these problems. We have been so focused on surviving that perhaps we have lost sight of other issues that are and will impact our industry. As things improve, we need to give attention again to other issues. Perhaps this is, the paradigm shift that we all have to make. Burying our heads in the sand and wishing away adversity is not going to do that. In conclusion, there's a lot of change happening in the world and our industry that deserve our attention. Not only are industry companies consolidating, but also 2 significant North American horticulture trade organizations are coming together, as Charlie mentioned. And later next year, we expect that OFA and ANLA will form a brand new trade association, and that our 2 organizations, in fact, will disappear. This means our groups we may dissolve, but we'll continue with our most impactful programs under a new umbrella. Our vision is to work on the industry issues with you, and things that we discussed, and help provide leadership with one voice, working cooperatively with state organizations and other organizations, building momentum to solve our industry problems. And obviously, this has to include academic and research communities, and I hope that you'll support our efforts in doing this. Really, finally, in conclusion, plant production and retail is changing. It's a reflection of the economic and social transformations that are happening around the world. But I hope the observation I've shared with you today had been a bit useful to rethink what's going on in our industry beyond just growing pretty things and trying to get them into market. Albert Einstein said, and you always finish a speech with a quote from someone famous. Mine is Albert Einstein. He said lots of memorable things, including this. The world as we have created is a process of our thinking. It cannot be changed without changing our thinking. So again, thank you very much for the opportunity to be with you. And I want to say Charlie and Michelle for hosting me at their home, along with their dog. It was very friendly. I'm enjoying my time here, so thank you.